All right. Let's see what we got going on over here. It looks like you guys should be able to see my screen. Should be able to see my little avatar. And this discussion kind of came up. People were talking today down in the Discord about um, getting work in the industry and talking about the state of the industry. I think there's probably you're going to get varying different. I mean, for sure, you're going to get varying different opinions on it. I can only kind of offer mine, and mine is just kind of you know informed by my experiences and dealing heavily with like my college students and those kind of things. Let me pull up the presentations here. Give me a second. Where are our stupid presentations channel? Ah, here we go. Okay, so pull this up here. Some of the things that I was just going to go over, I was going to put into a little bit of a presentation and kind of show you guys. Thanks for the follow, Neo Jassy. Hopefully this stuff's useful to you. What we'll talk about then is kind of this idea of like what I think it takes. I mean, like my path is different than others. I can tell you guys about that if you want, but I find that that's less interesting than telling you guys about what's going on. Real quick, our server has a bunch of events coming up. So on Saturdays, we got a Bash study group. I typically can't make it to that because I'm working with my college students around that time. So that's kind of one that I don't get to. But then we've got our 16-week automation course. We should be going into week 12 this week, which will be networking. I do still owe the guys the discussion posts. I'll probably do those tonight. I meant to do them the last couple days. I've just been kind of busy. There's a study group for that as well on Sunday. There's all these events. They're all free. You can go hang out. We are going to be doing the Linux admin course again starting February for people that want to do that. And that's kind of a challenging course. I think it's going to be pretty challenging for people to do 8 weeks because you're probably going to spend, if I had to guess, somewhere between in that course 8 to 16 hours a week. So I think that's the minimum. Savage Skills said, do you need to know coding before doing the automation course? I don't think so, no. Savage Skills, I don't consider myself to be like a formal coder, but it would be good to be familiar with some Ansible and that kind of stuff. But no, I don't think you need that to get in there. No, it's a little late to start. Not that people couldn't still start. I would still tell people to come and hang out if they need to and work through the old course. But the guys have still been putting this course together, so it's going to be available for people. We're going into week 12 this week, which is networking devices. We're going to touch some networking devices and pull configs off them and do some automation that way. So that's where that's kind of going. The stuff that I have going on here then is on the left is my notes. I wrote these notes on Stream a while back. We were looking at jobs and such. These notes are up in the Discord if anybody needs them. And what I was just going to do was kind of put them into a more formal presentation than this. So I was just going to start to clean up this presentation topic thing that I have around these topics. So we'll kind of talk to them. That's what I was planning on doing, was talking to these topics, maybe pulling up some things that I think are relevant around it. So one of the first things here is like, if you want to get a job in tech, right? If you just want a job in any tech sector, I think the first thing you have to ask yourself is like, what do you want to do, right? Like, and obviously at some point, like the real goal is to make money or to get off the rat race or whatever you want to say. Like some people want to do rewarding work, some people want to do. There's all kinds of reasons people are motivated. Typically, the first one is like food and shelter, right? But then after that, after you've been doing this a little while, I guess it opens up a little more for some other stuff. But where I'm going with that is like, I think you should try to figure out what you want to do, like what's interesting to you. These are all of our failed logins to our system. Anyway, so one of the ways that I offer to do that is in our Discord, I have a self-assessment you can do. The self-assessment looks like this. We've gone through this before, but I'll pop it up real quick here for people. Do I have it up here? Nope, gotta go find it. self-assessment should be right here. So this is what our little self-assessment matrix looks like, something like this. And what you would do is you would come in and you would try to determine what skills you have and what skill gaps you have between what you do now and what you want to do. And, you know, if you said, hey, Scott, I want to get into Linux, I say, okay, we've got all these things to do in Linux. And if you say, hey, Scott, you know, I don't really want to do Linux directly. I'd like to know some Linux backend stuff, but mainly I like to do storage or cloud. And I'd say, well, that's good. Linux is still a good base for a lot of that. But you don't have to do that kind of stuff, you know. Like I'm not forcing anybody to do any of that, right? This is for you guys. Like, so here's the purpose, the in scope and the out of scope, and the methodology and the controls for how I originally set this self-assessment matrix up. I did this for a team that I was on a while back, but this is like, you know, just kind of high level. What really is like rubber meets the road stuff is down here, where we would say, okay, assess yourself as where you think your skills are at this. And if you say, okay, I want to do Linux, you know, I think I'm like maybe a 3 at Linux because I do it professional, or I don't do it professionally, I just do it at home hanging out. And I say, that's cool. But how much do you want to do Linux? So this is your interest, right? So up here is your skill. You assess what you think your skill is in these areas. And then this is your interest, right? So you can put some numbers in there and figure out where you think you are. And this is not something that you have to try to get like a high score in. That's not the point of this. But this might be really useful to you because you might say, well, I've got some skill in database. I did database in college and I did a couple courses and I had like a pretty high skill. So I'm like a 7, right? Maybe an 8. I feel like I'm pretty good on database. But then you come down and you go, and database is really high. Maybe that's what you really want to do in your career. Guys, there's really, I know really, there's some really good pay out there in database work. I know some Oracle guys. In fact, let me put it this way. I don't know an Oracle database engineer that makes less than 160K a year. And that's about what I've seen them start at. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't some that are out there lower, but I actually had a recruiter kind of in my family, and he only recruited for Oracle DBAs, and that's about what he told me the average starting was for his guys that he recruited. Now, he was recruiting more mid and senior guys, but the point is there's a lot of work for that, and maybe database is the life for you. Who knows? Some of our guys, we leaned heavily into cloud in the server the last few years, you know, and some of the guys went and jumped actually from their companies. Some of them might even pop up on here. You know, there were some of the normal regulars, and they jumped over to, some of the guys actually went to AWS, right? So we've got probably 6-7 people that I know in our Discord that are at AWS, right? So there's various amounts of that kind of stuff going on. And, you know, they didn't necessarily do this technical assessment, but some of them were already working in the cloud maybe, and then they decided they wanted to do more cloud, and then they went and did it. And we had a little challenge there for a while. We were doing all of the getting our golden jackets and all that kind of stuff. We were messing around with that early 2020s, right? I think most of us were just cooped up with COVID and wanted to do something. Like we were cooped up in the houses, right? Like we couldn't go anywhere. So anyway, so you know, you come in and you do a self-assessment, and at the end of the day, the goal at first, however formal or informal you want to do this with yourself, and I would honestly say to people, without being too much on my soapbox. Sometimes I'm on my soapbox, but not always. Thanks for that control bite. Sometimes you might just say, well, you know, I'm not going to do Scott's self-assessment because I don't really think there's any value in it. I'll just do it, you know, my own way. And I go, well, that's fine. I'm not up here to tell anybody how to live their life. But what I am going to tell you is if your way has gotten you into like your 20s and then your 30s and your 40s, then maybe you go, well, maybe I'll sit down for 10 minutes and actually just hammer this out a little bit, right? So anyways, you know, I'm not going to tell people they have to do it, but this is up in the Discord. You can download it. You can go through it if you want. It's right here. It's called, it's right here. We're in the, what channel are we in? We're in the presentation channel, and there's all the stuff that I do is right here, guys. Like all the stuff I've made. Here's your self-assessment matrix if you want a way to do it. And as I say, a way to do a self-assessment. There's an old saying from Perl. Some of you guys know I kind of cut my teeth on Perl as a admin and stuff. That's what we were all doing in the early 2000s was PERL, Perl. And there's a saying in Perl called Tim Towdy. There's more than one way to do it. So I'm not telling you this is the only way to do it, but there is more than one way to do it. That's Tim Towdy, Towdy. Anyway, so all right, so you come down here, and you figure out what you can do and what you want to do, and then maybe you do even a business one, because not everybody wants to do maybe tech stuff. Some of you guys want to be business people, and you want to focus on this, and there's things to think about in here and where you would go. Thanks for the follow, Kane Local. Hopefully this stuff's useful to you. So here's a little self-assessment matrix. You go through and you just write out. It's like people tell you, write out your goals. It's the same kind of thing. Like, what do you want to do? I mean, there's the old quote that I always use from the Cheshire Cat. And Alice said, "Which road should I take?" And he goes, "Where do you want to go?" And he goes, and she says, "I don't know." And he goes, "Well, then any road will take you there." And that's really true, man. Like, if you don't want to be wandering aimlessly, then the goal is to pick a point. Typically, when we used to do land nav in the, I was an Army infantryman, you do land nav. Well, I guess sea navigation is the same way, but land navigation for sure. You pick a far point and you walk towards it. You count your steps. When you pick a point, we call shooting an azimuth, right? You shoot an azimuth the direction you're gonna go. If you want to think of this as ray tracing, if you want to think, I don't even know where people's careers are gonna take them, but you're pointing a direction and then you're going in that direction. But again, if you don't even care to point, then how do you even know where you're going to land, right? Kane Local said, "I'm 18, have my RHCSA and Sec Plus, been working in IT support specialist for 6 months now. Looking to get into sysadmin roles. Any tips for interviews and landing the role? Looking to be a platform or site reliability engineer in the next 6 to 8 years." Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I'm going to move this up a little bit so it's not in the way of people's questions. I always forget that I have questions going up a little higher there. There, we should be able to see that question now. Okay, so yeah, this is Kane Local. That's kind of the whole point of my professional Linux users group, the group that I run, and the goal is to get you guys into doing admin and engineering type stuff. So yeah, this little notepad that I have behind here, this is from our talk a while ago, and I was kind of turning it into a presentation, so that's kind of what I was working on today and just kind of talking through it with you guys. But we were on this first part of it, which is getting the job in Linux admin engineering. And the first one is find out what you want to do and then take a strengths, weaknesses, and then opportunities and threats type analysis of yourself, right? So this is kind of you look up and down yourself and you say, I don't know, man. I mean, you're 18, so like I was in the military at 18, but like this is where you like look at yourself in the mirror and you go like, oh, I got pretty good biceps, but I need to do some more, push-ups and get the triceps a little bigger. I need to do some squats. I need to, you know what I'm saying? Whatever that thing is that you need to do, you take a self-assessment and you decide what you want to work on, right? So this first part of it is again optional, but I tell people like if you've been wallowing, if you've just been kind of splashing around and Kane Local's 18, but let's say one of you is, 28 and you're like, am I going to be able to get into tech? I think you absolutely can, right? I think that's a perfect time to get into tech. Like there's an old saying about the sport I do called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where it's like the best day to start Jiu-Jitsu was 20 years ago or today, right? Like if you couldn't have started 20 years ago, you can always start it today, right? And that's like a fun sport and it's pretty great. But then we go down to learning some Linux. So the next part after you do your self-assessment and then, you walk through all this and then you do a strengths, weaknesses, and then opportunities and threats. And this is typically like a business type thing. Like you'll see this in business classes. But strengths and weaknesses tend to be things within your control. I'm strong at this. I read well and I'm very good at remembering things. That's like kind of a thing that I'm pretty good at, right? But then I have a really bad attention span, right? Personally, my attention span's terrible. But I jump around well between topics when I'm focused on like engineering tasks. So that's kind of like a strength to me, but I understand the weakness. Like if I find myself wandering around and not really doing anything, I won't get anything done, right? So there's that kind of stuff, right? Then there's the external things, which are generally outside of your control. Not always. I mean, there's things that you can work either way in here. But opportunities are courses you can take, Udemy, you start to see that like there's this AI thing that everybody's been talking about the last few years, and you decide that you're going to learn how to use like VS Code and whatever's built into it, Copilot or whatever, to at least understand the job, so that when you see that on like a Dice or a jobbing.com or something like that, you know what the market needs are for that that task or whatever, right? Like that job market needs AI driven engineers that know how to do what's commonly called like prompt engineering. But you're like, but that's not all I know. I actually learned the back end stuff as well. I just also know how to talk it through an AI as well. All right. And then employment opportunities, these are like, again, if the jobs are all Windows jobs, maybe you start out with Windows and then you get into Linux as you go. Maybe if somewhere near you is, security. I see a thing all the time that like there's no entry level security. That's very hard to get entry level security for sure. Oh yeah, Control Byte's right. I always talk about positive differentiators. So Kane said, "Do you think college is a good path, or should I focus on certifications? If college is a good path, what degree would you recommend for doing more Linux work?" All right, Kane, you're putting me on the spot a little bit because I am of a divided mind on this. I may be what you would call somebody who's going to give you, I'm going to kind of do the Socratic thing and be like, well, which would you prefer? But I will tell you the two things that I think. I do hold that college is, at least in America, I do think college is the best way to change your economic standing wherever you're at. I came from very lower socioeconomic, and four brothers, and my parents did not make a lot of money. And then I went in the army. Actually, three of my brothers, so four of the five of us went in the army, and we went to college, and all of us do much better than any economic predictors would definitely have shown from where we came from, right? So that being said, I think college is the number one best thing, and I would never tell you not to go to college. I am also, I've been a college professor for 17 years now. So I am a big fan at DeVry, because everybody always asks where. I am a big fan of college. That being said, I don't think you need college to get into this degree path. I think certs are valid. I think certs are valid for a very specific reason too. And I like certs. I have a bunch of certs myself. In fact, if you do !certs, it'll tell you all my certs over on the Twitch side. So I'm a big fan of that. And with that, I would say, don't just. I would say don't just go for certs. If college is something on the table, and there's actually a really nice hybrid method right now. I just told you guys I work for DeVry, but I'm going to tell you there's a really nice college that some of my friends have done really well with, going over to WGU. So some of my friends are pretty big fans of that. I think wherever you're going to get your formal education, if you are going to go that route, I think that it's very valuable to dig in on that. That being said, so then let's say you just start working on certs because you already have a few, so you already understand the next part I'm about to tell you. Certs are all about this thing called BOK, right? The body of knowledge. I learned about that when I did my project management, so many years ago, like almost 15 years ago now, sitting in college doing my PMP training. I never took my PMP, but that's the project management professional, and I took all the training for it in college, and I did all that stuff. I just never was super interested in that test. But there's a thing called the PMBOK, the PMBOK. That's what everybody calls it, PMBOK, PMBOK, and it's the project management body of knowledge. So let's just say that somebody was like, well, I want to get an RHCSA. Now, Kane already said he has his RHCSA, but when he was going to get ready for his RHCSA, he would have probably done something like this. He would have came over here and he would have said RHCSA objectives, right? And then he would have looked at all of these things right here. So RHCSA certificate, is this right on Red Hat site? Let's go look at what the objectives are, and then probably him, or through some course that he did or something, he would go like this, and he would go take all of these, right? And he'd throw them in a notepad. just go, let's just say I wanted a new notepad. And you would drop them all in here and clean them up a little bit. And then you would say, okay, do I know how to access a shell prompt and issue commands with correct syntax? Okay. If I don't know how to do that, do I know how to do that when I'm at a shell prompt? So if somebody gives me a command or asks me to read a man page, do I know how to do that? Okay. Well, we could probably say that that one's got like a check next to it, right? And then do I know how to do input-output redirection of files? Like, do I understand what all of these things mean? And I say, well, maybe I know what that is. So I go to like these are my home systems, right? I got a whole bunch of home systems, right? And let's just say I was on like the werewolf one, and I say, okay, I can cat etc cron tab. Okay, when I did that, right, I put to standard in some command over here called by name, and then I gave it some argument, which is a file, and I could give options in here that actually make it behave a certain way. Like I could give a -v, which would show special characters, right? But then we come down here and we say, well, okay, this is not to be mistaken with PEBKAC. That's actually really funny, which is problem exists between keyboard and chair or chair and keyboard. So real quick, hold on. So now etc cron tab came to the screen, but we could capture that, right? I could capture that output and maybe pipe it through some command, right? And then now what would happen is instead of the command, and by the way, I know, guys, I know some of you are like, oh, Scott, this is super simple. Yeah, I get it. That's super simple, but it's part of the body of knowledge that you would study if you were getting ready for a cert. I'm going far afield, but to show you guys, like if I said head 5, do I know what that would do? Well, it would take what was this is our input here, right? Going into standard in. And then output would look like this, standard out would look like this. And we would capture that right here and feed that standard out into the next command, which is head 5, which would only give us these first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, maybe, good. But maybe before I did that, I wanted to like count the lines. So I wanted to know the lines that were there and then validate. Well, head said it would give me the first 5 lines, but the numbered lines are only the lines that had content. So now I've got this weird scenario where number line would have given me a different output than if I had done like a word count -l. Well, why, right? And do I understand why? And then look, guys, there's a lot of stuff to learn in Linux. I'm not going to sit here and break it all down right now, right? That is what we do a lot. That's what the Bash study group's for. There's all kinds of cool things in our Discord about that. But the point is, do I understand how to use these? Do I understand the difference between this and this, which this is going to clobber a file and this is going to append to a file? And do I understand that and why it works and this kind of stuff? And this would be an example. Again, I'm just showing this as an example here. Let's say, no, we don't want to save that. Of looking at the body of knowledge, or some people would call them the objectives. But here's the body of knowledge needed to pass a RHCSA against the RHEL 9 or the RHEL 10 type system, right? That's what we're seeing here. So there's our study points. So I did all that to say, like, in your analysis, maybe you're really good at that. Maybe you're looking at your opportunities and you're saying, I could go past one of those pretty quickly with relatively little study, and my strengths are I already know a lot of Linux, so an opportunity is go maybe past some of those things. But the original question that was asked by Kane Local was, should I go to college or should I go for certificates? And I'd say they're not mutually exclusive, and I would never push you away from the path of college if that's something that you're already thinking of doing. I find value in college. It has... I even tell the guys when we sit around and talk, I say, look, I don't think you need college to do this stuff. But I'm going to like my 25 years of engineering, I have had massive amounts of like some of the jobs I have, I only got because I had master's degrees. And that is true. Like when I worked at Lockheed Martin, you can't work at Lockheed Martin as an engineer without at least a bachelor's degree in engineering discipline, which I also have, or a master's degree in some related type of discipline, which I did have. And then later I got a master's in engineering to move up. One time they said that to get promoted, I would have to go finish a master's in an engineering discipline. And that's why I have 2 masters. Not because I, or 2 master's degrees, and it's not because I wanted another one. Even though the Army was paying for it, so I didn't really care that much in that respect. But it was time, right? It was more classes and time. But I think that you can I think you can do all this stuff. I think you can be very knowledgeable. We have guys running around our Discord that don't have any college. One of my brothers who he would tell you he didn't even pass high school. He went and got his what's that called, like a GED. He went and got a GED because he lived with me when I got out of the army. He lived with me because my dad. Long story, but he basically got kicked out, and he came and lived with me. So he's kind of more like my adult son, and he didn't finish high school. And then now he's an infrastructure engineer 6 over at an insurance company, which is the highest engineering role they have unless you become an architect. They'd have to move him over to architect to pay him more. So he does really well with no degree. But so my point in saying all that is, you can go as far in this stuff as you want. And it sounds like in Kane's example, or in Kane's case, he's already got a Sec Plus, so he knows the security stuff. He's already got the RHCSA, so he knows the Linux side of things. So my focus then for this talk, and as we've kind of been walking through this, is getting that job, right? And this first thing we were talking about was figure out what you're good at and what you like to do, and then do like a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So this is the first thing I would tell you to do. Next thing I would tell people to do is learn some Linux. So what are the Linux skills? Like, what are the Linux skills that directly relate to like admin stuff? And I would tell you that these come directly from jobs that we've looked at. So what are the Linux skills that are out there? Well, this is more like admin skills for this top one, but like you do need to know documentation, right? Documentation you're always going to have to do. You're always going to have to be able to organize your thoughts. So understanding how to read and look at run books depending on the company and what the company has. Some companies will use an internal like MediaWiki, and that's a little bit different than normal straight Markdown. Some companies will do almost everything up in GitHub. I've worked collaboratively on teams that use the Teams tool. So Teams is the Microsoft tool, and then the OneNote plugin inside of it is super useful. I'm actually a big fan of OneNote. I think it's a powerful thing. I mean, you can use Notepad++ like I like to use, although this is not really the best collaborative tool. It's just more for like my raw documentation. I think you got to get good at documentation. I think you should be good at writing. There's whoops, writing as I mess it up. There's the 4 C's of technical writing. Some of you guys have heard me say this before. There's 4 C's of technical writing. Does anybody know what they are? Needs to be correct, concise, clear, and dodge. No, I'm just kidding. Correct, clear, concise, and coherent. Coherent. Those are the 4 C's of technical writing, right? Yeah, dodge, duck, dive, and dodge. If you guys aren't, oh man, that movie's so old, but it's so funny. I just rewatched it with the wife a little while ago. But yeah, like you want to be correct, right? You want to be, so correct is like you are saying true things. I tell you guys all the times that if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. I tell you guys all the times as engineers that our correctness and search for truth, we need to be as accurate as possible in what we do. You need to be concise. You need to say what you want to say without saying all the other things, right? You have to be clear and often to the point. And then coherent. Coherent's kind of a weird one because people are like, well, so I'm already being correct and I'm already being as concise and accurate as possible, right? Concise is like an accuracy term. And I'm already being clear, so I'm not like clouding up all these other things, and I'm even sometimes drawing clouds in engineering docs so that people know not to focus on things that we would call orthogonal to the discussion, or what some people might say as not relevant, right? And then coherent is the idea that I grab you by the hand and I walk you from start to finish and I do not let you wander. That's what the term coherent means in technical writing. And I had a fantastic teacher in college that helped me with this, and I have always been a pretty good documentation guy. It's always been like something that's worked well for me as an engineer, is like my ability to draw things out and document them and show people how things work and that kind of stuff. So again, those are the 4 C's of technical writing as I learned them. And then reviewing documentation, you need to get good at skimming things quickly, finding if things are relevant. A lot of us learned this out in the wild by doing scans of, right? We do Google searches and then go check Stack Overflow. Nowadays, AI tries to help you with this, but sometimes we still have to go filter. We had a interesting one the other day. This was an interesting one. We were up in the Ansible code channel, and one of the guys asked, "Hey, which of these is right?" Here is a thing that Ansible. There's a little snippet of code coming through from some whatever his AI was trying to say, right? And down here, it was giving a state hold. I've never seen the state hold inside of the package module. So this is apt, and then state was hold. And then over here, when he was looking at the state, there was no hold. So absent, build dependent, latest, present, which is the default, or fixed. So his point was, I don't see that. And I was like, well, I've never even heard of that one, right? So, John Doe, you say you bought a Prolog Labs update book. There really aren't, the updates aren't really coming out for it anymore. The book is done as it is. It sits at 100% complete. But I've been putting out more and more labs still. So if you go, so for guys that don't know, Killer Coda is a free site out on the web. When you're trying to get these Linux skills, one of the things we'll pull up here soon will be Killer Coda. And the Professional Linux Users Group, mostly me, but other people in the group have helped quite a bit. We put together a bunch of labs. It looks like I've last updated on the 4th, so almost a couple weeks ago. And there's a bunch of Ansible labs and automation labs. These are the course that we're doing now. We've got HashiCorp labs and Kubernetes labs and a bunch of Linux labs, right? And you come down to Linux labs, and then you can go and just click on any of these and drop into an environment and build out your Linux or whatever you're doing. In this case, let's say we wanted to do DNS and finding resources. We could go and walk through a scenario where we were like an admin or a tech or whatever, that kind of stuff. But yeah, John Doe, we mostly don't update that book anymore, even though more and more labs have still been showing up. You just really have to just keep going in there and using them. I have so many. I have like 30 labs to write that are still just bouncing around in my head. I just haven't done it. So then, as far as Linux skills too, like where do we go then? We got to be able to document stuff. Like we're going to be sitting as an admin or sitting in a network operations center and doing work where oftentimes, we don't know what the environment is when we start. Or if we do know the environment, we shouldn't be the only one that knows the environment. We should write that up and make sure other people know about it, right? Hack the Planet, how's it going over on the Twitch side? Yeah, John, we're basically just living it over here, right? Like in the Discord, we just keep working on Linux. That's what we do. So then the next one is like, for documentation, you've got all of this stuff. And then the next one is like incident management. Everybody you're going to deal with, every company is going to want you to be able to resolve problems. There's really two things engineers do. They build things and they solve problems. Building things tends to be a thing that engineers do often, and then admins tend to do a little more of the fixing things. But there's a blurred line there. Engineers do quite a bit of that as well. They do quite a bit of troubleshooting stuff. I often show you guys this model here. Let me pull this up real quick. I often show you guys this. This is the same topic from a different years ago maybe. And this is like a deployment methodology for systems. This is a common way that like an operations team would work. And this comes from Cisco. It's the prepare, plan, design, implement, operate, and optimize of a system. And what I kind of show here is project work and admin work, right? So sysadmins tend to start over here. They're operating systems. They're keeping the lights on. They're doing NOC, which is network operation and security operations. And maybe they're getting in on help desk. There's no shame early in your career, guys, of getting in and doing any of these roles because they're valuable. They're roles that companies need. That up just a little bit. And then they're, but we operate things, we optimize things, and we do them better. And then the what most people think is fun work, but don't don't get it twisted. It's still work, project work. We build things, we prepare, we research new technologies, we plan with how do we integrate, we design and do documentation and create what we call work artifacts of the things that are going to build. We build out our build books and the artifacts of how we're going to design and lay things out. And then we actually implement and hand it over to an operations team, right? These are things that we do on the engineering side of things. But engineers and admins, there's a lot of blurring between these in a company. You're probably not 100% an admin. You're probably not I'm not 100% an engineer, and I'm considered a principal, right? So they spelled it right too, or used the right version. So incident management, right? Like, how do we do incident management? And there are all kinds of ways to get good at this. This is also a big part of like site reliability engineering. What I would tell you guys for getting good at incident management, by the way, incident management and troubleshooting are like touching each other, right? They're basically the same thing. But incident management has a lot more to do with like controlling an incident from start to finish. And I have a whole talk that I do on this, which is here. I did it as a cybersecurity thing originally. Oh, that's funny. I had this up because I was doing it. We were talking about the other day in one of our talks, and this was cybersecurity incident response, right? And the way we talked through this was, this is the way people think. This is actually a bunch of real things that happen in IT over here on the left. And then on the right, the hacker gets in, the black hat gets in. And the reason he gets in is because they were doing all this stuff, but they weren't looking for him, right? So what they're showing is like, don't just do a bunch of things. So that's just something to get people thinking about it. And then we go through our topics, and down in the security incident response lifecycle, there's all these things that you have to have, policies, procedures, and teams need to be defined beforehand. You don't want to be defining those during an incident, right? But then during an incident, we've got triage, what's the most important thing, then investigation, containment, and analysis and tracking. Not necessarily even in that order. Triage is the first, but maybe we go look into some stuff and contain it. Sometimes we have a lockdown procedure from the start, and then we figure out, what our recovery looks like. We debrief and feedback how our external communication's happening. Typically, we have team-based. We update every 10 minutes during a bridge call or something like that, or every 30 minutes. There's all kinds of things. And then how do we mitigate and limit the scope of an incident? How do we keep it from coming again? Some of you guys were around for Log4j. When Log4j happened, there were like 5 or 6 vulnerabilities in a row that just kept pounding over and over and over again against Log4j. It was terrible. It was like weeks of just more and more vulnerabilities coming out, and then the patches breaking some other thing, and it was wild. But anyways, this is what we were using this for. Was this talk right here? This was the topic we had the other day where I pulled this up and I was showing the guys. I won't read all those to you. I'll leave them up for a second. But those are quotes from related to, basically the idea was, if you're going to do cybersecurity incidents, and you want that to be on your resume, I think you should practice. And the thing that we used in this course, when I did this talk, was from Black Hills InfoSec. So go look up Black Hills InfoSec and look up their game called Backdoors and Breaches. It's a Dungeons and Dragons style game, and then you go and this is the, if we were playing the game, this is my kind of breakdown of what we were doing. You basically get a story told to you about some incident happening, and then you guys have to figure out how you would fix it and what procedures you would go look at, and then we go and we talk through them. That is a universally loved game. People love playing that game. We're just not going to play it right now because that's not really the point. But I do have this out there somewhere recorded where we played that game and walked through those things or whatever. All right. So incident management deals with that. The other things I would tell you about incident management is know some of these. I just said earlier that there's some really good site reliability. I think it's sre.google.com. Is it /books? Well, we'll just go say Google. Let's have Google tell us. And then here's there it is. SRE.Google Books. I'll link that to you guys that really want it. Yeah, these are free books right here, guys. This is free is the best price on the web, right? And I also tell people this is another thing too. Back to that earlier question about college. Yeah, thanks for that, Control Byte. Yep, these books are absolutely fantastic, and they will walk you through things about keeping service level agreements, and then service level agreements. They also that's right, and then there's all kinds of other things within incident management, and how you're going to report things and all that kind of stuff, like I was just showing. But then that's actually a really good idea, Control Byte. Yeah, speaking of books, if you don't have a book club with your team company, start one. It's a good way to get reading while taking leadership. Absolutely. And actually, Control Byte, to that end, I should commission you. We have a thing called Reading is Fundamental. And I had talked about this months ago about starting a Phoenix Project group. And I never got around to us finishing it. But I had said, like, we should sit down and do it. I had it right here. Quartz, yeah, there you are. Because no, Quartz and Control Byte are not the same person. But I had said that I said I was going to reread it. So this was like back in October, and I was just super busy. But I said, does anybody want to do a virtual book club? I think we could definitely just do it and just do it in threads, right? Like read the first few chapters if people wanted to, because I know a lot of people have mentioned the Phoenix Project. I've only read the first 50 pages or so, and I never got back around to finishing it. But I would do other books too if people wanted. Look, I was even showing, this was us at me and the wife went to a bookstore, and I picked up some books. And then you say, why did you get Arnold's Bodybuilding? It's a long story. But it's mainly because years ago I got this book for free from a library. They were getting rid of it. And I was like, hey, Arnold, this was right when Arnold was becoming the governor of California. So it was back in 2004-ish, whenever he might have been governor earlier. But I said, oh, that's interesting. I'll just hold on to that. And then I got that other book the other day. So it's a long story, but I think it's funny. All right, anyway, so root cause analysis. Typically, root cause analysis comes later. We don't typically do this. I don't even know why I have this in incident management, except maybe a team or a company had asked about it. But incident management, root cause analysis, fishbone diagrams, sometimes called the Ishikawa. I'm probably spelling that wrong. Let's throw that to the old interwebs. Ishikawa, is that right? Somebody should know. One of you guys knows. The right Ishikawa. No, I got the Ishikawa diagram. Often called fishbone diagrams. If you guys have never seen these are a really important thing to understand about the cause and effects of some problem, right? This is engineering stuff, right? It's I would call this more engineering heavy, but somebody had asked for all these are directly from job postings that were out there. So somebody had asked for root cause analysis, and I was saying fishbone diagrams, a common one is asking why 5 times. And then another one which tends to come up before is the failure modes and effects analysis, which we won't go into all these now, but I do have a thing that talks about all of these. I do have a presentation that walks through these. And then permanent solutions, maybe stopgap, right? And what's a stopgap? Maybe we don't have a permanent solution. We can't spend the money until the new fiscal year, so we have to make the size that we have for the logging environment last for the next 3 months. So what's our stopgap? Our stopgap is that every Friday night, who's ever on the third shift goes in and deletes the 3 oldest tar.gz files from every one of the things. And the stopgap would be one of our junior engineers just writes a little script that does it, and then we just kick off a cron tab, and then somebody monitors on Friday nights. That would be the best little stopgap initiative to do that. But maybe one is at first you just have people go in there and manually do it. You just show the commands to your junior engineers and they go do it. Or the knock administrators, right? Maybe they have some basic little network. Maybe they have some basic permissions, and you can. One of the best ways for me is, especially because I like to have guardrails around what I give people permissions to, is something like we'll use Ansible, and Ansible will do the cleanup, but some person can kick it off with the elevated permissions that they don't normally have as a user. That's pretty valuable too. But incident management and then troubleshooting down here is these are they kind of work together. So incident management, again, I have that other talk on that we do, and then troubleshooting is like what's your standard methodology, and do you know how to escalate? Are you good at vendor management and wrangling vendors and keeping them under control? And then maybe we come over here, and for standard, this can be PDCA or OODA, I believe is the one. SRE Google Books, that one's not resolving for you? Let me see. It's still resolving for me. SRE.go, just type in SRE Books in Google, and it should take you there. No, zero prod. That should definitely just work for you. That link I gave you should just work. I just clicked on it too over on the YouTube side, and it was working. Yeah, you shouldn't have to log into anything for that. That should just, I think. Maybe I am in a browser as a user, I guess, but no, I think if I went in some other browser, I think I'd still get in there. Let me check. Yeah. I'm in a well, I think that's a non-logged in browser. Let me go check. Let me go check a browser that I know I'm not guys, I have so many damn browsers hanging around. This is a browser. Yeah, it let me in. I'm on a browser that I know I'm not logged in on Gmail. So, yeah, you should be able to get in there. But so, in troubleshooting, I have a whole presentation on like general troubleshooting, right? Like I walk you guys through how I think you should do troubleshooting. I walk through, we've done this one many times. This is also up in the Discord, but it's like how you can walk through some troubleshooting steps, some troubleshooting methodologies, how that looks visually, if you visualize that. There's a old one, reacting is a great method. It's research, engage, adjust, configure, and take note. I often tell you guys, you don't have to learn how to you don't have to be good at 100 of these. You need to be really, really good with one, right? And you can know more than one, but I'm saying like, you don't have to be like some expert on all of these. But research, engage, adjust, configure, and take note. That is a pretty good methodology that would probably get you through if somebody asked you about troubleshooting on an interview, right? Yeah. No, it's fine, Zara. I didn't mean to give you guys a bad link. If I did, I apologize for that. But reacting is a way, right? I'm a big fan of stepping through the OSI model. If I can ping a server, I know that it's up. I know that these things are working, at least through layer 3 of the OSI model, and then I can start checking up above. If I'm not able to ping, I can check down here. If I'm not able to resolve DNS, I can know that, and I can check all the things in between. Hey, Paul, how's it going? Paul, I've known Paul since, maybe 2013 or so. I've known Paul for a long time. Paul's one of our regulars, so good to see you, Paul. Knowing how to just what are the common failures in your environment. If you work in a big storage array environment and you have 10,000 disks, and you know that the mean time between failures, the MTBF of disks in your environment is like 700 days, so like 2 years is the average time that like one of your drives fails, and you have 10,000 of those, well, you should think, or you should know mathematically, that you're going to have some number of them failing daily. And that should be something that you're familiar with. You should have redundancies built in. You should have all these things. But a lot of times when we deal with like big spinning disks, what we call JBODs, just a bunch of disks, JBODS, we call them JBODs, just a bunch of disks. And yeah, we'll know that we have to replace them. So we'll have parts on hand. We'll have, all these kind of things. So this is one symptoms diagnosis solution. We're not necessarily going through this, but these are some of the ones. Systems thinking. Here's our failure modes and effects analysis. And then we talk through. I do this talk on different days, but like server build, what does that kickoff look like? And where could it fail? And then we make it mathematical with numbers between 1 and 10. And then we will always have risk priority number somewhere between the number 1 if they were all 1s. And if they were all 10s, you would have the number 1000. So you have a risk priority score, risk priority number between 1 and 1000. And it's very easy if you put good numbers into this to figure out what is going to be the most impactful to your project. What is the analysis of risk? So that's failure modes and effects analysis, if you guys have never seen that. I have other troubleshooting stuff, but the other ones that I wanted to show you guys, and this is because we're just walking through kind of these notes, and I was going to put them up into our getting into Linux operations talk. But another one here is the PDCA versus OODP. They're not, well, okay, it's not versus. You could do either or you can do a modified hybrid of them. So let's just go to PDCA cycle, right? And this is called the Plan, Do, Check, Act. And this one, I would say, this one's heavily leaned into in Six Sigma. So if you've never seen Plan, Do, Check, Act, it is a way of looking at a problem and saying establish the objective and processes required to deliver the results, do it, check to make sure that it worked correctly, and then act or adjust to improve the process. So plan, do, check, act. That is a troubleshooting methodology used typically, and there's also a study. There's all kinds of different check PDCA type cycles, right, that are out there. And then look at this one. O is observe the current condition. So there's an OPDCA as well. So that may be something. Now this other one, the OODA loop, this one is fantastic if you guys aren't familiar. This is a great way to troubleshoot things. So the OODA refers to the Japanese city Oda, and it's observe, orient, decide, and act. This was a fighter pilot. You can read about it if you want. Here, I'll link this to you guys if you guys want this one. But this is one that I intend to put into our troubleshooting docs eventually, where it's like it looks like some people think it's too. Here's the thing about if you're too rigid, right? If you have something like this design here, here's a diagram of the OODA loop, and there's some criticisms here from scholars that say it's too loose and flexible. But here's the thing: I would argue, and I come from a scholarly background, right? I'm working on my dissertation now, and the idea that when you make a model too rigid, it doesn't apply in enough scenarios. You need something that's got some give. You need something that's loose enough that it can just take in whatever you give it, right? Like let's say you had a rock tumbler, but it could only be loaded with rocks that were already smooth. You'd be like, well, that's a useless tool, right? Like, and the idea of this is, if people are kind of, say it's see what they want to see in it, that's fine, because the point of this is to make decisions quickly, right? There's an old saying. Wait, hold on a second here. Just spilled a bunch of water. Actually, I pulled it up on screen a little while ago. It's the, where's he at? Oh, I might have closed it down. No, it's right here. This one. A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week. That was General George S. Patton in World War II. And I agree with that. Like, the goal of this type of decision making is that even though it's not maybe the most structured, it's going to get you moving, right? It's going to get whatever the team is, it's going to get decisions made, and then the decision, we can recorrect, but we have to start moving. We can't literally just, like, could you imagine if you were sitting in like an incident and the first 20 minutes of the call was just everybody sitting there, like nobody knows what they're doing, everybody's just shouting, It would be like the worst bridge call ever. And I had a student ask me, was it a college student or was it on here? Sometime somebody said, "What's a bridge?" Well, there's actually a really fantastic thing for like the bridge. I don't want the word commander. I did not say commander. The bridge is this area where you always watch the captain give orders and people fed information back into him. And this is exactly the way that we run. I mean, I've actually been in rooms in government projects where they have a physical bridge like this, and the bridge commander is running all the satellite operations. And when somebody comes and takes the command, they actually physically come into this room. There's no other way to command all of this stuff than to be in this room, which looks, and this, the reason I'm showing you this is because while this is science fiction, this is exactly what it's like. They just don't have these silly little they don't look at sci-fi. Some of them do when you get up on the walls and they have all the satellite tracking and stuff. But my point in saying that is, like, this is what a bridge is like. And everybody's informing the bridge commander, or sometimes there's actually a job out there that you can look up called the incident commander. And some companies, especially bigger ones that have kind of, they'll have, you know, somebody who runs the network operations center as the bridge or the incident commander. And their job is to stand up and then report up to management. Typically they'll jump out of the call and update management in another call, and then jump back in with the workers and just keep gathering and documenting information as they go. That is a thing, right? So anyways, OODA, how do we escalate? So once we determine, like, you know, I'm working on like a RHEL 9 box, and I determine that this driver that I have for this InfiniBand card does not work with the newest version of the RHEL 9 kernel that's come out, right? We're on what, RHEL 9.6, and then let's say we go to 9.7, and I'm down in my dev environment. I haven't broken real stuff, right? I'm down in a dev environment, and I'm testing the upgrade, and then I'm running an RPM package manager to build for the new kernel on like this InfiniBand driver, and it's breaking. It won't build, it won't whatever. And when I get to the end of kind of my capabilities on whatever I'm building and doing there, and you say, well, Scott, can't you just take apart the driver and build it and get it working? Maybe I could, maybe. But here's the thing. If I do that, it's the same thing like if you bought a brand new car and you went and you took apart your fuel injectors, and then you took it back to the dealership and they're like, did you take this fuel injectors apart and put something else in there? And you're like, yes. Well, I guarantee you voided the warranty. Well, it's the same thing here. Sometimes, like, we're not in the business of building those drivers. That's not what my company does. Like, I'm on an insurance company, or currently right now I work for like NOAA. Mostly I work on that stuff. So I'm keeping the research scientists happy. I may have to escalate something to a vendor, and then they push it back to their production teams to go figure out why that driver doesn't work in that one instance with that type of hardware. In that case, like, you say, well, how do you interact with vendors? Vendors are a very special group. They're outside of your company, but your company pays them money. So depending on how much your company pays them and how much you work with them, you may have a lot of control over them or very little control over them. Like if you're like I worked at AAA and I was their platform engineering lead. We were a very big insurance company, but the spend that we had with like Red Hat was not big enough for us to be like, pull everybody into a meeting if we needed them, right? We weren't that big compared to like who Red Hat deals with. So while we did have good money and we did spend good money, we could get a few people, but I couldn't really like push them around. I'm on a project now where like we have embedded, our vendor is embedded with us with like 6 engineers. So we always have these engineers on our team. They're constantly down working on stuff. We have a big enough system. There's 2,600 nodes in 2 different locations. So, you know, 5,200 total nodes that they're keeping running. That's probably closer to 53, but who's counting? Well, the bean counters are. And then, like, how do you wrangle them? Like, if any of you guys have ever put in, like, a Red Hat ticket for some kind of problem like I just described, like, vendor management's interesting, right? Like, so I send up a trouble ticket to a vendor. They get money from us, so they're going to try to respond typically. But the very first 2 things they're always going to ask you, I'm telling you guys this right now. If you don't fill this out, you're just asking for trouble. If you can't just grab these and throw these in a trouble ticket, you just might as well know that you've wasted whatever time, because that's the first question they're going to come back with. What's the kernel version and what's the version of the release? That's the first two things they will ask you all the time. Yeah, look, I'm back on 9.4 still on this box, but I don't keep my system all the way up. But so vendors is like knowing how you're going to talk to vendors. If you've ever put in a ticket with like Red Hat, like I was saying, Red Hat will do this thing where they send you to the first two levels of engineer or like support first. And I'm telling you, the first two levels of support only know how to go read the documentation. So one of the things I always put in there is, I've already read all the documentation. I've already been through your site. This needs to go higher, right? Like I don't want to go back and forth for 2 hours or 2 days about this. And again, we're doing it in dev environment, so we're testing. We probably have a few weeks before whatever we're building in or whatever kernel we're going to roll forward to is good. But the point is, we need to be ready to do that, especially if a vulnerability comes out. You have to be ready to jump to new kernels in an environment, right? If you're the person responsible for that type of the management thing. I like that. Moon Pie Dumplings. The kernel is 2.6 in the version of Cisco iOS. I'm having trouble installing Kubernetes. That's pretty good. Moist said, interesting, is the relationship dynamic the same source of irritation between Linus Torvalds toward NVIDIA? I can almost guarantee you it is, Moist. Yeah, it's when you think about it, it's like who's beholden to who, right? Because I know Linus and NVIDIA have had a lot of problems. We've had a lot of, in the high performance compute space, NVIDIA drivers have probably given me more headaches than every other recent driver in the last 5 years put together. So like if you took like Scott's work, if you took all of my work and then you said, Scott, how much of that work that deals with drivers, and then we turn that into 100%, right? Like we drill in on that. I would tell you, of all the driver work that I've done in the last few years, let's say in the last 5 years I've done, because you do 2,080 hours a year, right, of work. That's about what you do. So let's just round it to like 10,000. Let's just say 10,000 hours. And if you said that, like, how much of that work do you think is like driver related? And I'd say in 10,000 hours, probably 500 hours. And they said, of those 500 hours of driver related work on high performance compute systems, how much do you think are directly related to NVIDIA? I would say 80% of it. So 400 hours I've probably mucked around building images in Werewolf and other types of systems to get NVIDIA drivers working specifically with, in the last few years, probably everything from RHEL 7 to like Rocky 9. So those are the most current ones or whatever. So I would say, yeah, that's probably part of it, is like Linus isn't big enough for NVIDIA to jump when he says jump, if that kind of makes sense. It's basically like who can make you say jump in a room, right? Like that's kind of, and it sucks that it's like that, but I mean, that's kind of the facts. So where I'm going with that is like vendor management and wrangling your vendor. If I know that I don't have a whole lot of pull with them, and I know I'm not going to be able to escalate this to like their incident commander or whatever, well then what I need to do is do the most correct thing. Like I was just saying earlier, like make sure that you put in the right information right in the ticket right away. Like just have this. This is the thing they're going to ask for. Do you guys know what the next thing Red Hat always asks for? 100% of the time. Can you do an SOS? Can you give us an SOS report? That's the next thing. Did you guys know SOS reports are, so this is an SOS report if you've never seen it. SOS report is a powerful command line utility for RHEL systems, but here's the thing, people have ported it over to Ubuntu. And if you've never seen it, it just goes and it grabs all the stuff that a technical person might want to ask about what that box was doing at the time of it. It does information. Now, let me tell you guys this one thing, and this is going to be one of those things where it's like, this is Scott's opinion, but it's also kind of my security opinion as also a Linux engineer opinion, but it's my security engineer opinion as well. You can't just do an SOS report. And okay, so in modern SOS reports, if you deal with Red Hat, it will give you the option to just attach the tar.gz and push it right up to the ticket then. I have never done that. I will never do that. I'm an engineer, but I'm also security focused. I will always go scrub my logs. if I have PCI, so you say, well, don't we trust them? Aren't we in a relationship with them? Yeah, but sure, we trust them. Yeah, we don't think they're going to do anything malicious. But do you know how many people have been like compromised because of like side trust with vendors, typically from smaller vendors to bigger, but or smaller companies to bigger. But what I would do is like, let's say I did an SOS report on a server in a PCI environment. You say, well, PCI, that's your payment card industry, digital security standard or whatever, PCI DSS. You say, what would you do there? I would say, well, I would pop open that report and I would scrub out all of my IP addresses in the ranges that are PCI controlled. And you say, really? That seems kind of that's a control, that is a tagged inside of our organization as a data structure. If you ever go look on any doc in our company, it will say right there on the doc, this is a confidential, internal, or secret information, whatever your company's standards are. But I would always go strip that information out 100% of the time. I've never sent those off automatically. But where I'm going with that is not to tell you like, oh, Scott's, break my arm, patting myself on the back. What I'm saying is that if I'm preparing a report up front, and I know they always ask for this, and then I know they always ask for the SOS report, and I know from what I was just saying earlier that I'm not so important that I can make them jump. What I should do then is make sure that I have all that information just pulled up front, right? It's like this idea, like, have you ever, I don't know how many of you were military, but if any of you were military, you got to do the work anyway, so there's no reason to fucking complain about it. You complain all you want, but you still got to do the work. Like I realized early on, I'm not going to complain because I got to do it anyways. So where I'm going with that is you might say, well, they don't have that military authority over you. No, but they do have vendor. Like we need something from them. We need to provide them what they ask. So I would just provide it up front, if that makes sense. Anyway, so that's how SOS report. If you never use SOS report, it's a very good tool. Now, in your environment, if you need to do monitoring, right? There's monitoring that we do as admins, and then there's monitoring that we do with systems, and sometimes us admins have to support that. So you say, what's the difference? What do you mean, Scott? Well, what I mean by that, Bohica, Bohica is bend over here, it comes again. Let me show you guys this other talk that I have, and some of you guys have seen this one a lot, so you're like, oh, Scott's pulling up Linux Systems Administration. Yes, I am. This one's been around a long time. It's one of my more favorite ones. Hold on, let me see if I have it in my. It's funny, it's not in my recents. Maybe it's been too long. I think it's just called Linux Systems Administration. So, real quick, get rid of our little Mike Tyson quotes here. This was a different talk, which we weren't doing right now. But this one is up in our Discord right here as well, the one that I'm about to show you guys. And what I'm going to show you is like, we can talk if we were going to. We're not going to right now. This is recorded and it's up in the Discord. But if we were going to do Linux Systems Administration, there's a bunch of admin things, and then there's a bunch of ways that we do it, right? There's a bunch of things we look for and what we do. But then down here, there's a bunch of commands. And I can show you these commands, and then we can go here and say, okay, all the things Scott said, which was the big four are CPU, memory, disk, and network. And then we're looking at the utilization, saturation, and errors. Again, you guys don't have to screenshot this or anything. This is in the Discord if you need it. It's right here. You go to presentations, and it should be right. Where's this one at? Linux Systems Administration right there. Look, boom, I'm not a liar. So it's not as recent. I probably need to update it and repost it. But where I'm going with that, hold on. Stick with me for one more second, guys. I'm getting far afield, but this is important. These things right here are commands that we can do, right? System kernel information, system distribute, like all these are great commands. And I would tell you, learn how to use these commands and learn how a system starts up and all that stuff. But this is not something right here. This right here is not something that I can hand over, like if I do system CTL failed, right? And then we go and we see, oh, network manager wait online failed, and then we go figure out why. These are not things that I can turn over to like a manager or a PM and say, check this every morning. Check this every morning and see if the system's good. Guys, they don't even know what this is. They literally don't, like, I'm not trying to be mean about it. I'm saying management doesn't know this stuff. I've tried to explain this stuff to management over the years. You start to talk and do this stuff right here, and you can see people's eyes glaze over as they stop listening to you. They can't do it. And I'm not saying that they're not smart enough. I'm just saying, like, they don't have the patience or the whatever. You know, they're engineers. They're not engineers like us. All right, guys, real quick. I got to take a call real quick from the wife. I got to put you guys on mute for a second. But I'm going to show you guys the next part of monitoring here in a second, which is this. This is what we can feed them. We can feed them like this. All right, I got to take this call from the wife real quick. So I will be, let me put a little timer up. Hourglass. Oh no, wrong thing. Hour. There we go. Let's put this up for a minute. Let's say, go like 8 minutes. Stretch your legs. Boom, 8 minutes. All right, I'll be back, guys. I'm back, guys. Can you hear me? Let's see. Yes. But we'll still take a little bit more of a break because I figure maybe people want to walk away and stretch their legs and stuff. But I am sitting here, so if you guys have questions or want to know what I'm talking about, because I am just kind of a madman in some cases, right? Just let me know. I am sitting here. That thing up there is drawing in real time, in case anybody's wondering. There, you might be watching that sand art going, what the hell is that? My wife's little sand art thing. We repurposed Ranger Cam after he passed, and I just moved it up here and pointed it down. She's got this little sand art thing that just has a little magnet underneath that drags this ball around and draws stuff. It's kind of fun. I don't really spend a lot of time watching it, but I just have it up there because people like distractions. People like things I think that they can space out on while I'm, you know, just lecturing on about things, right? So the wife's coming home, but she's probably a little over 20 minutes out, so I have some time before she gets here. Let me link the Discord to anybody that wants the Discord. Put that over on the Twitch side and the YouTube side. Sometimes on the YouTube side, people have a hard time with the link. It seems to me like if you just drop into like a, what's that called? Like an incognito, it'll let you right in. I don't know why that link doesn't always work for people over there, but It's the same link on both, and it still works for people. It just sometimes when people get it, I don't know if they add a character to it on YouTube or something, but there's that. Oh, I don't know if I showed you guys. I definitely have not shown stream this yet. Jerry Boo said, do you use VirtualBox or VMware? So I don't use either of those. In my home lab, I use, so I'll show you this. I use a couple of different tools. I have XCP-NG, which is a virtualization tool. It was the fork of Xen when Xen got picked up by Oracle. So I have 4 machines that sit in my little half rack over there that just run a bunch of virtual machines, right? So that's my primary lab environment, are those. And then I have a brand new box that I put together in October, and I really haven't put anything on it yet, which is this beefy Proxmox server. He's got about 512 gigs of RAM and a bunch of hard drive. I think he's got about 4 terabytes of hard drive space. So he's basically just chilling over there. The only thing he's doing in my environment right now is running my NFS and my, so the Hostbox 2 replaces Hostbox 1, and it runs all of my stuff, but that's over on Proxmox. So I have Proxmox and XCP-NG. I interact with them typically just through a tool. I just use PuTTY, guys. I've always been a PuTTY guy, and then I use typically Screen at the bottom. So I can just close down this shell at any time, right? I can just kill the shell. Right, I just kill the shell. I don't even care. And then, like, let's say that would, what I just did right there would simulate, like, disconnecting at work and then coming home, maybe getting into a VPN and then jumping back into my server from home, right? Maybe I was working all day at work and then I come home, right? This would be back in the days when we were more in the office, and I would go like this, right? I would drop in as my user, whatever that is. And I would see my screen. I could reconnect to my screen, and here I am back in that same environment you guys just saw me in. So I love Screen because it abstracts it's a no-hup environment. So it's like a shell that I'm connecting into, and then from my primary jump box, Jump01 is the main box that I do things on, then I can jump into my different shells. So this is my box that runs all the labs, right? All the lab servers, Bastion node in through P01 Jump02. I have drawings that show how all this works. But then, yeah, so I have, and then typically this guy needs to be called Werewolf. So I know that he's Werewolf, right? And then this node is the one that runs my lab environment. So this is the lab that all of you guys can go into. If you guys need to know how to get in there, go to our Discord, go down into Prolog lab environment, and you can actually just go to the pinned messages and see that if you add your public key, you can get dropped into that Bastion. It shows you how to connect right here. So people that are in our Discord that want to get in there can. And then the lab environment's there for you guys to use. And when you reset the lab environment, it comes up clean because it's all Werewolf backed. But yeah, we have a mix of physical hardware, five physical servers, about 80 virtual machines, but I can expand up at any time right here. Like I only have one box here. I could probably easily support about 80 nodes out here if we were doing like a big Prolog connection, that kind of stuff. So yeah, hopefully that answers. But I have Oracle VirtualBox on this local machine. I could pull it up. I've used that before to show people how to build their own machines locally. But often I just tell people anymore nowadays, if you can get into Killer Coda, you can do a lot of this stuff. Yeah. And if this looks like Hyper-V, you're probably right. It probably has there's some similarities between kind of what this stuff looks like. You can come in here and you can look at these are the hypervisors here, right? Sitting directly on the physical hardware. They're type 1 hypervisors. And then you can see the allocation of memory to them. You can see their storage allocations, that kind of stuff. So for people that just got back from break, if you were on break doing whatever, the question was like, what do I use in my home lab? And the home lab is a set of virtual machines and on top of physical machines that are type 1 hypervisors, and then all of that kind of stuff. Okay. Moist, you said when you mentioned Log4j vulnerability, I Googled some of it. You brought up that as a past episode, I'm gathering, but something worth learning about to come away strong. Yeah, I think, Moist, there were some really interesting things that came from Log4j. I think that you could probably find some really good, interesting I'm sure there's good blogs. You probably find some good YouTube videos on it. What you'll find with me is you'll never go back through my stuff probably and find me doing. There's very few times when you'll find me doing like something that was like me just breaking something down, because I don't want to say that's uninteresting to me. That's not what I focus on. That's not what I'm good at. What I'm good at and what I actually was part of during that, I can show you this. I wrote a thing during this. Where were we at? While we were doing this, do you guys see the log4j? I don't see it here. Yeah, I'd have to go find where I wrote it. Looking for log4j. I could do a find, but this is a pretty old box. And that could take some time. Sometimes my stuff is down in here. I don't see it, but to answer that question, Moist, if you went back all the way to 2021 when we were dealing with it, what you would see me do on stream was write. I actually wrote my playbook on stream that I then took into work, and then I used that to actually fix a bunch of the log4j problems on, I don't know, 1,500 Linux boxes at the time. Yeah, but if you were here, man, there's so many things. You never know what you're going to get into in our server. But if I were to go to log4j, that's how it was spelled when we did it. You can go back and find these things. And this was actually when I wrote. So I did this one live on stream here, and then I actually ended up taking it into work. So, it's down in my Ansible 12. So look, that's when I wrote it. That's a long time ago, right? What is that, like? Geez, that's a long time ago. Anyways, but this one right here, this was actually interesting. I was working with Qualys at the time, and my buddy was like he was one of their VPs over their engineering section, and I was on a call with him, and I was explaining to him that in their Qualys had a fix to detect, right? Because there were no fixes early, but there was detection early. But their detector would come back that a server was clean if zip and unzip weren't on the box, even if the box wasn't clean. And you say, well, why is that? Well, because in their bash script that they were pushing to do like this quick, again, this is this idea of stopgap measures that we were talking earlier. If the machine didn't have zip or unzip, it wouldn't be able to unzip the jar files. And then since it couldn't unzip the jar files, it would just say, well, I can't check it, so I'll call it good. And then it would pass over things that were busted. Well, our Linux servers don't have zip or unzip on them. Most companies in production environments don't run zip or unzip. That's not something I want people. I don't want people unpackaging stuff in my prod environment, so I don't have that, right? So when I did this, I pushed this to all the nodes, but then I told them, I'm like, you guys have an assumption in your script that's giving false. It's actually false negatives, which is very insidious and a security problem. So where I'm going with that is this was the thing. So if you needed it, I can actually link. So if anybody wanted this, I would just go like this. I would say copy message link, jump to present. This is from stream tonight. Right, we were talking. Right? Can't type as fast as I used to, right? I just messed stuff up now. But anyways, that was the thing that we were looking at back here. Boom. So I wrote all this to do the thing. Oh, and then we had to set that. This was funny. I had to set a cron tab. This was a funny little cron thing that I made up, and then it it does a random number between 9. They wanted 9 and 21. But this would never do 21, so it would do 9 to 20. And then, so this is the way that you can step everything, every value from 9 to 21 right here. And the reason we wanted that was we wanted all the environments to kick off at different times. So this was a very, very specific use case. and my use case is different than what actually happens because it won't ever do 21. So this is actually only through 20. But that was enough. That it was spread out enough in the environment. But this is like a randomization of a cron tab entry. I thought that one was kind of funny. I might actually take that and go. I might post that down there and say this was a funny use case. Right, so then people can see and go, wow, that is kind of a weird reason to, oh, and then it doesn't have the whole blog. Hold on, let me grab the rest of the line. Because if anybody copies it, I want them to have the whole line. So that needs to be with it too. Edit, boom, boom, there you go. There you go. Because then, you know, again, if anybody needs it, they have it. But that randomization thing was kind of a funny thing that I found. And I'm like, oh, I have literally never used that randomization since inside of Ansible. But that's a funny little thing. All right. So what were we doing today, guys? For people that got in here later, we were about to talk about monitoring. And I was saying that all the things that we can talk about here, the health of the system, uptime logs, errors, performance, capacity, stability, availability, reliability, all of these things can be done from the command line. And I showed you guys that little thing here. This was right before the break. And I said, I can show you all of these things and we could do them all and we can hug hands and kumbaya and be admins together at the command line. But you can't do any of this stuff. You can't give any of this to management. I would never trust them with root, even if I could, right? Like, I'd be like, get out of here, right? So where I'm going with that is we have to do something else. And what we end up doing is building monitors like this, building monitors through some type of implementation of a monitoring infrastructure. Now, and you say, oh man, more overhead. Yeah, more overhead, but now management can go look at the system and see the capacity for the last 7 days. They can say, oh, we did go high on CPU capacity. Did we expect that? Yes. But that's fine because in this case we were doing antivirus scans. And our memory went a little high, but in this case again, it's the same concept. Are we almost crashing any of our root usage on our servers? Our network storage is getting higher than we wanted. We're tracking all this different network storage and making sure that we're not trending towards in the next, 1, 3, or 5 months of normal usage, hitting typically just 1, 2, or 3 months, hitting some high water mark or hitting what we call a unsustainable capacity issue, and we can start to work on it quicker. But all these things right here, I could show you, again, this is why I'm saying this, I could show you how to do all that over here inside of a command line. But you can't, that doesn't expand out to other teams. That doesn't go to management. A project manager can't check that. A project manager can check this, right? So to this point of monitoring then, can I do all of these things in a Linux system? Most all of you probably can. If you've hung out with me for more than 10 minutes, you've probably done some of this stuff in Linux. You've probably gone and looked at your logs. You've probably checked the uptime of your server. You've probably seen if your servers are utilizing their CPU or their memory or their disk or those kind of things, right? Well, all of us have done these things. But have we tracked this in a way for management or for, in this case, this is a heads-up display of the logs, the failed users in our system. And this might be useful for our network operations team to see. Maybe I shouldn't be seeing it. In my environment, I'm connected out to the world. Anybody can try to connect to this. That's why there's so many failures. But maybe seeing 5 failures in an hour is a massive security breach because nobody can hit this box unless they're on our, on our VPN. So now we think somebody's connected to our VPN correctly, but they've been compromised, and there's a password spray against our servers because they're just getting a bunch of failed passwords over and over again. That's a real thing, right? And then this starts to feed. This is very basic monitoring here, but this starts to feed into what we call SIEM and SOAR, right? SIEM or SIM, I've heard it called both ways, is security and event information monitoring, right? And then SOAR is security orchestration and remediation. So it's monitoring things and remediating them quickly in an environment, right? But all of these things are part of this. So monitoring may be right? And security, it's information and event monitoring, so I think it's more like that. Or is this? I don't know. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It's security, information, event monitoring, or security, event, and information monitoring, whatever you want, right? I thought it used to. I used to think it was incident, but it's not incident. It's just information. And then SOAR is security orchestration and remediation, right? And we build these types of things to do that stuff for us, right? As part of that, you get into IDSs and or IPSs, right? And intrusion detection versus intrusion prevention, right? Intrusion detection just watches things. Intrusion prevention actually changes things. So like in my home lab, here's the box that everybody can connect to. If we go look at fail to ban, we have a bunch of servers that have failed themselves out forever. We have 1,293 currently banned as far as IP addresses that cannot get into our system. And we have currently banned, there's actually 8 right now that can't get in even if they wanted to. And I think we have like an 8-hour timeout on them so that I don't have to manually reset them like I used to always have to do. But we can track and do all of these different things in the environment. Okay, guys, I gotta go. I think I heard the wife here. I think she's home, so I gotta go hang out with her for a little bit. So I appreciate everybody coming. If this stuff's useful to you, hop down the Discord, hang out with us. We don't bite. We're not. I don't think super difficult to deal with. I try to keep us as friendly a community as possible. Like you might. I'll be honest though. If you go down there and just ask like, hey, what does the PS command do? You might get yelled at by somebody, but I'm gonna tell you guys, like, if you're asking questions and you're honest about it, and you're looking stuff up and you're trying to figure it out, we've got a pretty good community for that kind of stuff. I think a lot of these guys will help you out. All these notes and stuff are up in the Discord. These notes, well, not these modified. I can put these modified ones up there again. But there's a lot of stuff here to kind of keep unpackaging, and we were right here, so we'll start it back up again maybe tomorrow when I come on again. But yeah, no, I definitely appreciate you guys coming by. Again, hang out down the Discord, ask questions and that kind of stuff. And I will see some of you guys later on. All right. Look at that thing drawing. Look at it go. It's like a little Morty. Look at it go.